Amidst cruel stares, a young woman tries to go unnoticed in a hall that rejects her. When the pressure mounts, closing her eyes is the only way she knows how to endure. But an eccentric count approaches her and transforms this gesture into something entirely new. And what was once an escape begins to become confidence, presence, and true connection. If you like love stories and romance, watch until the end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comments saying where you are listening to this beautiful story from. We continue. Marina should never have been there. She had known this from the moment she crossed the wrought iron gates of the mansion in Laranjeiras, carrying a silver tray that weighed more than her entire week's salary. The black and white dress of the waitress uniform marked her as part of the service staff, but it was her face that truly gave her away. Some glances recognized her. Others simply looked away, as if her presence were a visual nuisance they preferred to ignore. The charity gala brought together the most traditional elements of Rio de Janeiro, surnames that echoed centuries of history, fortunes built upon fortunes, conversations in French mixed with aristocratic Portuguese. Marina moved between groups offering smoked salmon canapés, keeping her eyes down, breathing slowly. She had learned this technique at 17, when everything collapsed, when the headlines turned her life into a public spectacle, when her name became synonymous with scandal, even though the full truth had never been told. The daughter of a city councilman accused of corruption. That was all people knew, or rather it was all they wanted to know. It didn't matter that Marina was only 15 when the scandals emerged. It didn't matter that she discovered her father's betrayals herself on television, sitting in a modest living room in Madureira, watching her mother collapse in tears. It didn't matter that she had spent the last 6 years working 3 different jobs to pay for her night classes in business administration, to support her mother after her father fled to Paraguay with a blonde assistant and half of the embezzled money. To those people, to that society of crystal and champagne, she would always be the daughter of the corrupt man, the stained girl, the intruder. The main hall had very high ceilings, crystal chandeliers that looked like waterfalls of light, and acoustics that amplified every laugh, every clink of glasses. Marina felt the weight of that space as a physical pressure in her chest. She took another deep breath. She counted to 10. She thought about the electricity bill due on Thursday, the payment for the English course she needed to pay to get a promotion at the events company where she worked as an administrative assistant. She thought about everything except being there. That was when she heard the comment. 2 women in long dresses, one emerald green and the other navy blue, were talking near a marble column. Marina passed them offering the tray, and the voice of the one in green reached her ears with surgical clarity. "It's her, yes, Geraldo Santos's daughter. What audacity to show up here." "I thought she had some shame," the other replied, accepting a canapé without looking at Marina. "But these people really have no limits." Marina froze. The tray trembled slightly in her hands. She knew that moment. She knew the feeling of internal collapse, the flush rising up her neck, the sudden urge to disappear. Her eyes began to close. It was involuntary, automatic. Closing her eyes was her way of creating distance, of building an invisible wall between herself and the world that hurt her. If she didn't see, if she wasn't present, perhaps the pain wouldn't be so sharp. But before she could dive completely into that dark refuge, a deep and strangely serene voice cut through the air. "Interesting. You close your eyes when you feel external pressure." Marina opened her eyes immediately, startled. A man was standing less than a meter away from her. Tall, he looked to be in his mid-30s, with slightly messy brown hair and thin-framed glasses that gave him a professorial air. He wore an impeccable dark suit, but his tie was slightly crooked as if it had been put on in a hurry. He observed her with an intensity that wasn't invasive but analytical, as if he were studying a natural phenomenon. Sorry, sir, can I offer—" "No, thank you, I don't eat salmon. The smell bothers me." He tilted his head, still observing her. "Do you do that consciously, or is it an automatic response?" Marina blinked, confused. "Do what?" "Close your eyes, it's a defense mechanism. Your body tries to create a sensory barrier against stimuli. It interprets as threatening, fascinating." He spoke as if he were commenting on the weather. "How many times a day do you do that?" I don't know what you're talking about. You're lying. He smiled slightly without malice. Your shoulders tensed when those two women made depreciating comments about you. Your pupils dilated slightly. Your fingers tightened on the side of the tray. And then you closed your eyes for approximately 3 seconds. It's a pattern. You do it frequently. Marina felt a mixture of indignation and astonishment. Who was this man? And why was he talking to her that way, as if it were normal to approach a waitress with behavioral analysis in the middle of a party? Excuse me, I need to get back to work. So you don't have to. He held out his hand, and Marina saw he wore a ring with a family crest. Come with me. You are about to have another episode of sensory disconnection. This environment is saturated with hostile stimuli for you. You need a break. Sir, I can't just... Yes, you can. I know the owner of the house, and she won't mind if I request that you accompany me for a few minutes. He said this with disconcerting simplicity, as if he were mentioning that the sky was blue. My name is Pedro Henrique de Vasconcelos y Bourbon. People call me Count Pedro, although the title is just a symbolic Portuguese inheritance with no official value in Brazil since 1889. You can just call me Pedro. Marina was too stunned to fully process what was happening. A count? For real? It felt like a scene from an 8 o'clock soap opera. I'm Marina, she replied automatically. I know, I heard when those women mentioned your last name. Marina Santos. He gestured toward a side door. Let's go. There is a winter garden in the back. It's a more suitable environment for you to regain your balance. Maybe it was the tiredness. Maybe it was the emotional exhaustion of being in that place, surrounded by looks that judged her without knowing her. Maybe it was simply the overall strangeness of the situation that made her follow that man. Marina set the tray down on a side table and walked behind him, feeling the curious gazes of some guests follow her movement. The winter garden was a glass greenhouse attached to the mansion, filled with tropical plants, hanging ferns, and rare orchids. The temperature was slightly warmer than the rest of the house, and the air smelled of damp earth and flowers. Pedro walked to an iron bench near a stone fountain and sat down, gesturing for Marina to join him. She hesitated but eventually sat, maintaining a safe distance. You must be wondering why I brought you here, he said, crossing his legs and adjusting his glasses. The answer is simple. Your behavior pattern intrigued me. And when something intrigues me, I need to understand it. Behavior pattern, Marina repeated, unable to hide her dry tone. That sounds a bit invasive, don't you think? I suppose so. I apologize if I was inconvenient. I have difficulty with social nuances. People say I'm eccentric. My sister says I'm rude. My psychiatrist says I have a mild autism spectrum disorder and a fixation on patterns. I just say I observe the world differently. Marina stared at him, trying to decide if this was genuine or some kind of elaborate game. But there was something in his eyes, an almost childlike sincerity, that made her relax slightly. And what do you want from me? Pedro, and I don't want anything. I observed something interesting and decided to intervene. You were about to have an emotional breakdown in the middle of the hall. Those women are known for their social cruelty. I've seen 3 people cry after interacting with them at previous events. He took off his glasses and cleaned the lenses with a cloth handkerchief. I thought it would be useful to remove you from that situation. Useful for whom? For you, obviously. And I admit, useful for me. I'm avoiding an extremely tedious conversation about real estate fund investments with a distant cousin who believes money buys refinement. Spoiler, it doesn't. Marina felt an involuntary smile on her lips. This man was truly peculiar. He spoke about heavy things with a disconcerting lightness, as if he were narrating an anecdote. Are you, Pedro, really a count? Technically, yes. My great-great-grandfather received the title of Count of Vasconcelos in 1870, granted by Dom Pedro II. With the proclamation of the Republic, noble titles lost legal validity, but my family maintains the tradition out of nostalgia, I suppose, or stubbornness, or both. He put his glasses back on. I don't use the title officially myself. I am a doctor of behavioral neuroscience, a researcher at UFRJ. But people insist on calling me Count. It's easier to accept than to constantly correct them. Behavioral neuroscience, Marina murmured. That explains the analysis you did of me. It explains my ability to observe patterns. It doesn't explain my lack of social tact. That is another matter entirely. He stared at her again with that analytical gaze. Can I ask an invasive question? You've already asked several. Fair, one more then. Why do you close your eyes? Marina looked away, focusing on the white orchids blooming near the fountain. The water dripped softly, creating a hypnotic rhythm. Why did she close her eyes? No one had ever asked that directly. No one had ever noticed. I don't know, she admitted in a low voice. I think it's like you said, a defense. When things get too heavy, when I feel like everyone is looking at me, judging me, I just want to disappear. And closing my eyes is the closest I can get to that. Pedro nodded slowly, as if processing the information. Understandable, but ineffective. Marina turned to him, surprised by his frankness. Excuse me? Closing your eyes doesn't remove you from the situation. It only removes you from the perception of the situation. The pressure continues. The judgments continue. You just don't see them. But your body feels it. That's why your shoulders are tense, why your breathing is fast, why your hands are shaking. She looked at her own hands. He was right. They were shaking slightly. And what do you suggest I do? Face everyone head-on and, what? Argue? Defend myself? I've tried that. It doesn't work. I'm not suggesting confrontation. I'm suggesting a change in perspective. Pedro stood up and walked to the fountain, dipping his fingers in the water. Closing your eyes can be useful, but not to run away, to feel. I don't understand. He came back to her and held out his hand. Close your eyes. Marina stared at him, suspicious. Why? Trust. I need a minimum of trust to demonstrate what I mean. She hesitated. All of this was surreal. She was in a winter garden with an eccentric count who talked about neuroscience and was asking her to close her eyes. It was madness. But there was something in his voice, a total absence of threat, that made her relax. Marina closed her eyes. Now, Pedro said, his voice closer, don't run from what you're feeling. Just observe. Do you feel the air is more humid in this environment compared to the hall? Do you smell the earth, the flowers? Do you hear the water from the fountain? Marina paid attention. Yes. She felt all of it. The air was truly different there, denser, laden with moisture and natural fragrances. The water from the fountain created a constant, soft melody. Now notice your breathing. It's slower than it was 5 minutes ago. Your shoulders are less tense. Your fingers aren't shaking anymore. She realized he was right. Her body had relaxed. When you close your eyes to escape, your body remains in a state of alert. But when you close your eyes to feel, to be present in the moment, your nervous system receives a different message. Safety. Calm. His voice was almost hypnotic. You aren't running from the world. You are connecting with it in a deeper way. Marina opened her eyes slowly. Pedro was sitting beside her again, observing her with that same analytical expression, but there was something else there. Genuine curiosity. Maybe even care. How do you know so much about this? She asked. I research neuroplasticity and trauma, how the brain creates response patterns to stress situations and how we can reprogram those responses. You created a pattern of sensory dissociation as a survival mechanism. It's intelligent from an evolutionary point of view, but it's limiting you. And can you change that? Me? No, you can if you want to. He stood up and straightened his tie, which remained slightly crooked. The question is, do you want to? Marina fell silent, processing all of it. 5 minutes ago, she was in the private hell of a party where she wasn't welcome. Now she was in a winter garden, talking about neuroplasticity with a researcher count who apparently didn't care about her scandalous past. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know if I can change who I am. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm offering a possibility to change how you relate to what you feel. He walked toward the exit of the greenhouse, then stopped and looked back. Come to the botanical garden on Thursday at 10 in the morning. There is an interesting phenomenon I want to observe, and I think you should see it too. Why would I go? Pedro smiled, and it was the first time Marina saw something beyond analysis on his face. It was a genuine smile, almost timid. Because you are curious, and because for a few minutes you forgot to close your eyes to run away. That is progress. And then he left, leaving Marina alone in the winter garden, with the sound of the fountain water and a strange feeling in her chest. Something between confusion and hope. She didn't know how to name it, but she knew that, for the first time in a long time, she felt like finding out what would come next. Marina spent the next 3 days trying to convince herself that she wouldn't go to the botanical garden. It was ridiculous. She had work on Thursday morning. She needed to deliver reports to her boss. She had a pile of bills to organize. She couldn't just skip out to meet an eccentric stranger who invited her to observe an interesting phenomenon. It sounded like a lame excuse from someone who wanted what exactly? Marina couldn't understand Pedro's intentions. But at 9:40 on Thursday, there she was, walking through the gates of the botanical garden with her heart racing and a mixture of anxiety and excitement she hadn't felt in years. She had asked for time off, claiming a doctor's appointment, a lie that made her feel guilty, but not enough to give up. She found Pedro exactly where he said he would be, near the pond of the Vitorias Regias, giant water lilies, sitting on a wooden bench with a notebook on his lap and a thermos beside him. He wore jeans, a light blue button-down shirt and sneakers. No suit, no formality. He looked years younger. When he saw her approaching, his face lit up with a genuine smile. "So you came. Statistically, there was a 62% chance you wouldn't show up." Marina stopped in front of him, crossing her arms. "And how did you arrive at that number?" Social anxiety added to the pressure of professional commitments, multiplied by the natural embarrassment of accepting an invitation from a stranger. But you have a high propensity for curiosity, which increased the chances. He closed the notebook and stood up. "I'm glad curiosity won. I still don't know why I'm here." "Because you want to be. That is enough." He took the thermos and poured coffee into 2 metal mugs he took from a backpack at the foot of the bench. "Coffee? I brought milk and sugar separately. I don't know how you take it." Marina accepted the mug, surprised by the gesture. "Black, no sugar." "Just like me, interesting." He took a sip and pointed to the pond. "The phenomenon I mentioned is about to happen. It's 10 o'clock. The angle of the sun at this time creates a specific effect on the Vitorias Regias." She looked at the enormous green leaves floating on the surface of the water. She didn't see anything special. "What effect?" "Observe in silence, and if you feel like it, close your eyes, but not to run away, to listen." Marina wanted to ask a sarcastic question, but something in his seriousness stopped her. She remained silent, observing the pond. At first, she didn't notice anything different, just water, giant green leaves, some ducks in the distance. But then, as the sun rose higher in the sky, rays of light began to pierce through the treetops at specific angles, creating luminous patterns on the Vitorias Regias. The water reflected the light back, making the leaves shine with an almost unreal green. And there was a sound. Marina closed her eyes, focusing only on her hearing. The singing of birds, yes, but that wasn't what Pedro wanted her to notice. There was a rhythmic, soft, almost imperceptible sound. It took her a few seconds to identify it. It was the sound of the water moving gently under the leaves, creating small waves that lapped against the edges of the Vitorias Regias. A natural, organic, mesmerizing rhythm. "Can you hear it?" Pedro's voice was low, almost a whisper. "Yes," Marina replied, keeping her eyes closed. "The water, the movement. Now feel the sun on your face, the breeze, the temperature changing as the clouds pass." She felt it, the heat of the sun touching her skin, then the cool shadow of a cloud, then the sun again, the light breeze bringing the scent of flowers and damp earth. Her body relaxed completely. There were no judgments there, no sideways glances, just her, that moment, those sensations. When she finally opened her eyes, Pedro was observing her with an expression she still couldn't completely decipher. Satisfaction? Approval? Or something deeper? "How do you feel?" he asked. "Calm," Marina admitted. "Present, as if everything has slowed down." "Because it has slowed down for you. The world continues at the same pace, but your perception of it has changed." He sat on the bench again, gesturing for her to join him. "That's what I want you to understand. The problem isn't closing your eyes. The problem is the reason. When you close them to run away, you lose the connection. When you close them to feel, you intensify it." Marina sat beside him, still processing the experience. Do you do this often? Come here to observe phenomena? 3 times a week. Each day has its peculiarities. Mondays, the gardener prunes the plants in the orchid greenhouse at 7 in the morning. The sound pattern is interesting. Wednesday afternoons, a specific species of hummingbird visits the heliconias near the east exit. Thursdays, this moment here. He gestured to the pond. Saturdays, I watch the sunset from Vista Cinesa. Sundays, variable. Is this your life? Part of it. I also teach, research, write articles. But this type of observation is what keeps me balanced. The world is too chaotic. People are too unpredictable. But nature has patterns, and patterns calm me. Marina studied him. There was something deeply lonely in that confession, even if Pedro didn't realize it. Don't you have friends? Family? I have a sister, Clara. She lives in São Paulo. She's a lawyer, married a businessman, and has 2 children. We speak once a month. My mother died 5 years ago. Cancer. My father is in Italy. He started his life over there. As for friends, he paused, thinking. I have co-workers, people I talk to about research. But friends in the traditional sense? No. People find it difficult to deal with me. They say I'm cold, disinterested, strange. You don't seem cold to me. Pedro turned his face to her, and Marina saw genuine surprise in his eyes. No? No, you seem honest, direct, different, but not cold. He was silent for a long moment, and Marina realized her words had affected him in some way. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. You are also different from what people say. And what do people say? I looked you up, about your father's case. I read the news, the public records. He said this bluntly, and Marina felt her stomach tighten. But news never tells the whole story, so I'm asking you directly. Who are you, Marina? Beyond what is written in the public archives? Marina felt the familiar impulse to close her eyes, to pull away. But she remembered what she had felt moments before. She remembered the feeling of being present, connected. She took a deep breath and decided to try. I was 15 when it all started. I lived in a big house in Tijuca, studied at a private school, had ballet and piano lessons. A common upper-middle-class life. My father was a city councilman. He was always busy, but he was present when he could be. Or I thought he was. She paused, organizing her memories. When the scandal broke, it was like a bomb exploded in the middle of our living room. Suddenly, there were reporters at the door, schoolmates avoiding me, teachers looking at me with pity. My mother fell into deep depression, and my father, he simply ran away. He left us in misery, with debts, with lawsuits, with our name destroyed. And you took on the responsibility, Pedro completed. Someone had to. My mother could barely get out of bed. I sold everything that had any value. We moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in Madureira. I started working as a pharmacy cashier, then at a snack bar, then doing events. I studied at night. I slept 4 hours a day. Marina felt her throat tighten, but she continued. People looked at me as if I were contaminated, as if my father's corruption had passed to me through blood. I lost friends. I lost a boyfriend. I lost the chance to go to a federal university because my name appeared in the headlines during the registration period and no one wanted to give me a recommendation letter. That's why you close your eyes. That's why I close my eyes, because it's easier not to see the judgments, not to feel people despising me for something I never did. Pedro nodded slowly. You carry the guilt that isn't yours, and they project onto you the anger they feel for your father. It's a toxic but predictable social dynamic. Predictable? Marina laughed humorlessly. I don't know if that consoles me or depresses me more. It shouldn't do either. It should set you free. He turned fully toward her. You spent 6 years trying to pay for crimes you didn't commit, trying to prove yourself innocent to people who never gave you the benefit of the doubt. But Marina, you don't owe them anything. Nothing. The words were simple, but Marina felt the impact of them like a punch to the chest. How many times had she thought that in silence? How many times had she wondered why she still cared about the opinions of people who condemned her without knowing her? But to hear someone say it out loud, to hear this strange and brilliant man validate her deepest thoughts, "It's hard not to care," she whispered. "I know. That's why change doesn't come from ignoring. It comes from reframing." Pedro took his notebook and opened it, showing pages filled with graphs, drawings, and observations. "I spent years trying to understand why people saw me as strange, trying to fit into social patterns that didn't make sense to me. It was only when I accepted that I see the world differently, that it's not a defect but a characteristic, that I managed to exist without so much suffering." "And you think I should do the same? Accept that people will always judge me and just move on?" "I think you should stop trying to defend yourself from others' judgment and start building your own narrative. Not for them, for you." He closed the notebook. "Come with me. There is something I want to show you." Marina followed him along a path lined with imperial palms that rose like green columns against the blue sky. They walked in silence, and Marina realized it was a comfortable silence. There was no pressure to fill the space with small talk. Pedro seemed perfectly at ease with the silence, and that somehow allowed her to be as well. They arrived at a clearing where there was a sensory garden, a circular space with plants of different textures, braille signs and sound stimuli created by bamboo structures that tinkled in the wind. "This garden was created for people with visual impairments," Pedro explained. "But I come here because it teaches something most people forget, that we can experience the world beyond sight." He guided her to an area with aromatic plants, basil, rosemary, lavender, mint. "Close your eyes," he instructed softly. Marina obeyed, and this time it was easier. There was no fear, only curiosity. "Now just feel, don't think, don't analyze, just feel." She felt Pedro gently take her hand and guide it to one of the plants. Her fingers touched small velvety leaves. The scent of lavender invaded her nostrils, soft and comforting. Pedro moved her hand to another plant, thicker leaves, an intense and refreshing scent. Mint. "Each sensation is an anchor," Pedro said, his voice close. "When you feel lost, overwhelmed, you can come back to these anchors, not to run from the world, but to reconnect with your body, with the present." Marina opened her eyes and found Pedro very close, observing her with that analytical intensity she was beginning to recognize. But there was something else there now, something that made her heart race. "Why are you doing this?" she asked in a low voice. "Why do you care?" Pedro hesitated, and for the first time Marina saw uncertainty in his eyes. "I don't know, this is unusual for me. Usually I can explain all my behaviors, trace the logic behind my actions. But with you—" He paused, adjusting his glasses in a gesture Marina already recognized as nervousness. "With you, I acted on impulse. I saw someone in distress and wanted to help. Simple as that. Or maybe not so simple. Do you help many people at parties?" Marina tried to make the question sound light, but it came out more vulnerable than she intended. "Never. You are the first." He took a step back, creating space between them, as if he needed distance to process. "It intrigues me. That's why I continue. That's why I invited you here. Because I want to understand what is different about you. And if there is nothing different, if I'm just another traumatized person trying to survive. But you aren't. There is a resilience in you that is extraordinary. You should be shattered. By statistics, you should have developed deep depression, chronic anxiety, maybe even self-destructive tendencies. But you are here, working 3 jobs, paying for college, taking care of your mother, surviving." He stared at her. "That isn't common, Marina. You are not common." Marina felt tears burn her eyes. When was the last time someone had said something like that about her? When was the last time someone had seen beyond the scandal, beyond the shame, beyond the stained surname? "I need to go," she said abruptly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I have to work this afternoon." "All right." Pedro didn't try to stop her, but there was disappointment in his voice. Can I see you again? It doesn't have to be here. We can just talk, or observe things, or be in silence. I adapt." Marina looked at him. This strange and brilliant man who had entered her life like a meteor, destabilizing everything she thought she knew about herself. She should say no. She should protect her heart, keep her distance, avoid getting hurt. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "Saturday. You said you watched the sunset at Vista Cinesa. Can I go with you?" The smile that lit up Pedro's face was so genuine, so completely devoid of artifice, that Marina felt her heart tighten. "At 5 in the afternoon, I'll meet you in the parking lot." Marina nodded and turned to leave, but before she could take 3 steps, his voice reached her. "Marina!" She looked back. "You are extraordinary. I hope one day you can believe that as much as I do." Marina didn't answer. She just gave a small smile and kept walking. But as she left the botanical garden behind, she noticed her steps were lighter, and that, for the first time in years, she felt something like hope blooming in her chest. A fragile, scary hope, but real. And maybe, just maybe, it was worth protecting. Pedro's house in Cosme Velho was exactly as Marina imagined it would be. An old 2-story building with high windows and a garden full of plants that seemed to grow in specific patterns. When she rang the doorbell on Sunday morning, her heart was beating so hard she felt everyone on the street could hear it. Pedro opened the door barefoot, wearing a white linen shirt and jeans, his hair still damp from the shower. There was something deeply intimate about seeing him like this, in his personal space, disarmed of the formal layers of the outside world. "You came," he said with that smile Marina was starting to love. "Did you have doubts?" "Statistically, there is always a margin of error, but I hoped you would come." He pulled her inside and closed the door. "Advance warnings. The house is organized according to a system that makes sense only to me. There are piles of books everywhere, and lunch might be a culinary disaster." Marina looked around. The living room was spacious, with a high ceiling and a library that occupied an entire wall. There were indeed piles of books in various corners, but everything had a strange order, as if every object had been placed in a purposeful spot. Posters of neurological maps shared space with abstract paintings. A telescope was set up near the window. It was the space of someone who lived inside their own mind, but who also observed the world with obsessive attention. "It's perfect," Marina said sincerely. "You are the first person to say that without sounding like you're lying to be polite." Pedro interlaced his fingers with hers. "Come, I'll show you my home lab. It's where I spend most of my time." He guided her to a room in the back that had been transformed into a workspace. There were computers, equipment Marina couldn't name, charts taped to the walls, labeled samples on organized shelves. It was the heart of the house, she realized, the place where Pedro was most himself. "Here I analyze data from my research, write articles, develop neuroplasticity models." He pointed to a series of graphs. "This current project is about how specific sensory stimuli can help in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm testing the hypothesis that positive sensory anchors can reprogram automatic fear responses, like when you taught me to close my eyes to feel instead of run away." "Exactly. You are in a way my first real experience with the theory and practice." He seemed to realize how that sounded and quickly added, "Not that you are a guinea pig. I mean, you are important independent of the research. That came out wrong." Marina touched his face, smiling. "I understood what you meant, and I don't mind being part of your research if it helps other people." Pedro pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "You are incredible, you know that." Before Marina could respond, a female voice cut the moment. "Pedro, did you forget I was coming today? I brought the documents that—" The voice stopped abruptly. Marina pulled away quickly, turning to see a woman at the door. Tall, elegant dark hair pulled into an impeccable bun, expensive beige suit. She looked at Marina with an expression Marina knew well, surprise mixed with judgment. "Clara," Pedro said, and there was tension in his voice. "I didn't expect you so early." "Obviously." Clara entered the room, her high heels echoing on the wooden floor. Her eyes didn't leave Marina. "And you must be—" Marina Santos." She held out her hand, trying to ignore the tremor. Clara shook her hand with a firmness that bordered on aggressive. "Clara de Vasconcelos y Bourbon Machado, Pedro's sister, pleasure." Her tone didn't suggest any pleasure. "Pedro, can I speak with you? In private?" "No, you can speak here." Pedro's voice was firm in a way Marina had never heard before. Clara narrowed her eyes. "Don't be childish. These are family matters. Marina is important to me, so anything you want to say, you can say in front of her." Marina saw shock pass through Clara's face, followed by something that looked like genuine concern. She sighed and crossed her arms. All right, I need your signature on some documents from Mum's inheritance. The lawyer is finalizing everything and needs authorization to transfer some investments. She paused, looking at Marina again. I also came to warn you that there's a family dinner next Friday. Aunt Helena will be in Rio and wants to see you. I'm not going. Pedro, I'm not going, Clara. You know how those dinners are, 3 hours of gossip and judgments disguised as family interest. I'll pass. You can't avoid the family forever. And now with, she gestured vaguely toward Marina, news, I think it would be interesting for you to show up before they start speculating. Marina felt her stomach churn. Speculating, that's what would happen. Speculations, gossip, judgments. Clara, I'm not going to present Marina at a family dinner, as if I'm reporting to you all. It's not reporting, Pedro, it's including. If she's as important as you say, the family will want to meet her. They'll want to judge her, you mean? Not everyone is like you think, and even if they were... Clara sighed again and her voice became softer. Pedro, you know how things work in our circle. People talk, and if you suddenly show up with someone no one knows, they'll talk even more. It's better to do it the right way. The right way according to whom? Marina's voice came out before she could think better of it. Both looked at her. Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude, but what is the right way? Being presented as the Count's girlfriend to a family that has probably already Googled me and knows exactly who my father is. The silence that followed was heavy. Clara had the decency to look embarrassed. Look, Marina, it's not personal, but you need to understand that our family's position comes with certain expectations. And Pedro's dating has always been news, ever since that time he went out with the daughter of the French ambassador and caused a diplomatic incident because he criticized her for wearing floral perfume at a Japanese dinner. She was masking the subtle flavors of the omakase, Pedro defended himself. It was a valid observation. You compared her to someone who puts ketchup on caviar, because that was exactly what she was doing, sensorially speaking. Marina almost laughed at the argument, but the situation was too serious. I'll let you two talk. It's clear I shouldn't be here. No. Pedro held her arm gently. You're not going anywhere. Clara is. Pedro Henrique de Vasconcelos, don't be ridiculous. I am your sister. And Marina is... He hesitated, searching for the right words. Marina is mine, and you are not going to treat her as if she were a problem to be managed. The use of the possessive made Marina's heart race, but it also scared her. This was becoming too real, too fast. Clara studied her brother's face for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentler, almost maternal. All right, I'm leaving. But Pedro, think about what I said, not about the family dinner, that can wait, but about how you two will handle this publicly. You both deserve privacy, but you won't have it, not in the circle we live in. So it's better to be prepared. She picked up her purse and walked to the door, stopping beside Marina. I don't know you, Marina. I don't know if you're with my brother out of interest or because you actually like him, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, because the way he looks at you, I've never seen that before. Clara softened her tone. I only ask that you be honest with him. Pedro might seem cold and analytical, but he has a heart more fragile than he appears, and he's already been hurt enough. I won't hurt him, Marina replied with conviction. I hope not, because if you do, you'll have to deal with me, and I am far less gentle than my brother. She smiled, but there was a real threat behind it. See you later, Pedro. I'm leaving the documents with you. Call me when you sign. When Clara left, silence filled the house. Marina felt her legs go weak and leaned against Pedro's desk. I'm sorry, Pedro said, looking genuinely distressed. She didn't have the right to question you like that. She has every right. She's your sister. She worries about you. But she didn't have the right to make you feel like an intruder in my life, because you're not. Marina looked at him, at this man who defended her so firmly, who included her in his world without hesitation, and she felt fear tighten her chest. Pedro, maybe she's right, about being prepared, about how people will react. I don't care how people will react, but I do. Marina's voice came out louder than she intended. You can afford not to care about others' opinions. Your name, your position, your family protect you. But me, I'm the daughter of the corrupt man, the scandal girl, And when people find out we're together, they'll say I'm a gold digger, that I'm taking advantage of you, that... They'll tell lies, and lies don't matter. Yes, they do. They mattered when they destroyed my life at 15. They mattered when I lost friends, opportunities, dignity. They matter because in the end, it doesn't matter what the truth is. It matters what people believe. Pedro fell silent, processing. Marina saw when something changed in his eyes, when the reality of what she was saying began to sink in. "You're afraid," he said softly. "I'm terrified." "Of what they'll say or of what will happen between us?" The question caught her off guard. Marina had no immediate answer. Was she afraid of both, or were they the same thing? "I don't know," she admitted. "I just know this is happening very fast, and the more real it gets, the scarier it becomes." Pedro approached and took her hands. "Can I show you something?" He guided her upstairs to a room that was clearly his, Spartan, organized with a large, simple bed, a shelf full of technical books, and an entire wall dedicated to photographs. Marina approached the photos, landscapes, natural phenomena, patterns in nature, and in the middle of them, recently taped up, 3 photos she recognized. They were of the places they had been together: the Botanical Garden, Vista Cinesa, the Sensory Garden. "I take photos of moments I want to remember," Pedro explained. "Things that mean something to me. I put these here because they were the most important moments of the last few weeks. Not because of the places, but because you were in them." Marina felt tears burn her eyes. "Pedro, I understand your fear. I understand that the world can be cruel. I understand that there are real consequences for the choices we make. But, Marina, if we don't try, if we let fear decide, we will lose something that could be extraordinary. And statistical data shows that opportunities for genuine connection are extremely rare." "Are you using statistics to convince me to stay with you?" "I'm using everything I have. Logic, emotion, scientific evidence. Because I want you to stay, and I'm going to fight for it the only way I know how." Marina kissed him. It was a desperate kiss, laden with fear and desire and hope. Pedro pulled her closer, and somehow they ended up sitting on his bed, exploring this new territory with a mix of urgency and tenderness. "Stay," Pedro murmured against her lips. "Today, tomorrow, as long as you want, stay with me." And Marina realized she wanted to. She wanted to stay in that room, in that house, in that moment. She wanted to forget the world outside with its judgments and complications. She wanted just to feel. They spent the rest of the day together, talking, cooking a lunch that was indeed a culinary disaster, but which they ate laughing, lying on the sofa, while Pedro explained his research and Marina told stories from college. It was simple. It was perfect. It was scary in its intensity. When the sun began to set, Marina knew she had to go. She had work the next day, she had responsibilities, but when she stood up to leave, Pedro held her. "I know you're afraid, and I won't pressure you, but you need to know that for me this isn't passing. It's not an experiment. It's real." "How can you be sure? We've known each other for 2 weeks. 3 weeks and 4 days, technically. And I'm sure because all indicators point to the same conclusion. When I'm with you, my world makes more sense, and I want to keep making sense, with you." Marina hugged him tight, hiding her face in his chest. "I want to too, but I don't know if I'm strong enough for what comes next." "Then let's find out together, one moment at a time." When Marina finally left the house and got into the Uber she had called, she looked back and saw Pedro at the window, watching her. She waved, he waved back, and then the car pulled away. On the way home, Marina checked her phone and found 3 messages from her boss, asking if she could cover an event on Friday night. A charity event. In Ipanema. She was about to decline when she read the last line of the message. "The Vasconcelos family is among the hosts. We need our best team." Marina's stomach dropped. It was the dinner Clara had mentioned, the family event, and she would be there serving canapes while Pedro's family gathered without knowing she existed. She replied that she accepted the job because she needed the money, but also because a part of her wanted to see. She wanted to see Pedro's world without his filter. She wanted to really understand what she was getting into. She just didn't know if she was ready for what she would discover. The mansion in Ipanema was even more imposing than the one in Laranjeiras. 3 stories of classical architecture, impeccable gardens, a view of the sea. Marina arrived 2 hours before the event to help with setup, wearing the black and white uniform that marked her as part of the invisible team that made that world function. She tried not to think about Pedro. She tried to focus on work, organizing the trays, checking the table arrangements, ensuring everything was perfect. But it was impossible not to feel the anxiety growing as the guests began to arrive. The Vasconcelos family was there in full force. Uncles, aunts, cousins, in-laws. Marina observed them discreetly while serving champagne. They were all elegant, confident, with that posture of those who never had to question their place in the world. The women wore jewelry that was probably worth more than Marina's apartment. The men discussed business and politics as if they owned both. Clara was there, stunning in an emerald green dress, talking to an older woman who must have been the mentioned Aunt Helena. When Marina passed nearby with a tray of canapés, Clara recognized her immediately. Her eyes widened slightly, but she controlled herself, accepting a canapé without saying anything. Marina moved on, her heart racing. That was when she heard the voice that made her freeze. "No, Aunt, I'm not staying long. I only came because Clara insisted. You know I'm not one for social events." Pedro, he was there. Marina turned slowly and saw him near the entrance, talking to a lady with impeccably styled grey hair. He wore a dark suit, looking uncomfortable but composed, and he hadn't seen her yet. She needed to get out of there. She needed to, but where? She was part of the service staff. She couldn't just disappear. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, but she felt the pressure rising. The impulse to close her eyes, to disconnect, was overwhelming. "Marina?" Her supervisor's voice startled her. "I need you to circulate in the main hall and stay alert. This is a demanding clientele." There was no choice. Marina picked up a tray of champagne glasses and entered the main hall, keeping her head low, praying Pedro wouldn't see her. But fate had other plans. She was serving a group near the windows when she heard his voice behind her. "Excuse me, can I—" Pedro stopped mid-sentence. Marina turned slowly. She saw the shock in his eyes, the confusion, and then the realization. He looked at her uniform, at the tray, and back to her face. "Marina," he said, and there was something broken in his voice. "What are you doing here?" "Working, sir." She said the last word deliberately, creating distance. "Would you like a glass?" "No, we need to talk now. I am working." "I don't care. Come with me." He took her hand, but Marina pulled away. People around were starting to notice, murmurs, curious looks. "Pedro, no, not here, not now." "Then when? Why didn't you tell me you'd be here? Why did you agree to work this event?" "Because I need to work. Because unlike you, I don't have the luxury of choosing." Her voice was rising, and Marina realized they were becoming the center of attention. "Because this is my job. This is my life." Clara appeared out of nowhere, positioning herself between them with a forced smile for the curious onlookers. "Pedro, this isn't the moment. Marina, come with me, please." She took Marina's arm and practically dragged her out of the room, into a side hallway. Pedro followed them, ignoring the stares and whispers left behind. "You two are impossible," Clara hissed as soon as they were alone. "In the middle of the hall, really?" "She didn't tell me she'd be working here." Pedro seemed genuinely hurt. "Why, Marina? Were you avoiding me?" "No, I just accepted the job. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought it would be easier this way." "Easier than what? Than being honest with me?" "Easier than facing this." Marina gestured to the party beyond the door. "Then seeing your world for real, then realizing how different we are." "We already discussed this. I said I didn't care." "But I care, don't you understand? I was in there serving champagne to your family, to people who look at me as if I'm invisible. And in half an hour, I'll have to go back and keep serving as if nothing happened. This is my reality, Pedro. Not natural phenomena and scientific research. This is it." The voice of an older man cut through the argument. "What is going on here?" A tall gentleman with grey hair and a military posture was approaching. He had the same analytical gaze as Pedro, but with a coldness that the son, no, the nephew, lacked, Marina mentally corrected. "Uncle Augusto," Clara said quickly. "Just a misunderstanding with the service staff. It's already resolved." "That doesn't look resolved. And you, Pedro? What do you have to do with this?" Pedro looked at Marina, then at his uncle, and Marina saw the moment he made a decision. "Marina isn't service staff, Uncle. She is with me." The silence that followed was deafening. Augusto looked at Marina more closely, his eyes scanning the uniform, the face, returning to Pedro. "She is with you? What do you mean?" "As a girlfriend, a partner, the person I chose to be by my side." "Pedro, don't be ridiculous. This young lady is working at our party. Obviously she isn't—" "Isn't what?" Pedro's voice was dangerously low. "Finish the sentence, uncle." Augusto looked at Clara, searching for allies, but she only sighed and shook her head. "Pedro, a private conversation. Now." He didn't wait for an answer, turning and entering a side room. Pedro hesitated, looking at Marina. "I'm not going anywhere without you." "Yes, you are," Marina said, feeling tears burn. "You need to settle this with your family, and I need to get back to work before I'm fired." "Marina, please, just go." He seemed to want to argue, but Clara pushed him gently toward the room where the uncle was waiting. "I'll stay with her," Clara whispered. "Go on, resolve it." When Pedro entered the room and closed the door, Clara turned to Marina. "Well, you certainly know how to make a dramatic entrance. It wasn't intentional, I just wanted to do my job." "I know. And look," Clara sighed. "I'm sorry for how I treated you at his house, and I'm even more sorry for this." She gestured to the whole situation. "My brother has never done anything halfway in his life. When he decides on something, he goes all the way. And apparently, he decided on you. He barely knows me. He knows enough. And knowing Pedro, he probably knows things about you that you don't even know yourself. He observes. It's what he does." Marina felt her legs go weak. She leaned against the wall, feeling the world spin. "This is crazy. All of this is crazy." "Welcome to the Vasconcelos family, where nothing is simple and everything becomes a drama." Clara took 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray and offered one to Marina. "Drink. You're going to need it." "I'm working." "Technically, you're having an emotional collapse in a hallway, so drink." Marina accepted the glass and took a long sip. The alcohol burned her throat, but it helped calm her nerves. From the closed room they heard raised voices. Pedro's firm and controlled, and Uncle Augusto's indignant. They couldn't distinguish the words, but the tone was clear. Argument, confrontation. "He's going to regret this," Marina murmured. "He's going to regret defending me. Or he's going to regret not having done it sooner, with other things." Clara studied her. "My brother spent his whole life being who others wanted him to be. The brilliant grandson, the promising researcher, the eccentric but harmless count. I've never seen him fight for something he actually wanted, until you. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you mean to him. And because if you leave now, if you let fear win, you will destroy him in a way our family never could." The door opened abruptly. Pedro came out, his face flushed, his breathing rapid. Behind him, Augusto remained in the doorway, with an expression between indignation and resignation. "Marina," Pedro said, completely ignoring his uncle, "let's leave." "I can't. I need to work." "No, you don't. I just spoke with the owner of the events company. You are released with full pay for the night." "How? You can't just—" "I can and I did. Now please come with me. We need to talk. We need—" He stopped, appearing to realize they were being watched. Half the party had migrated to the hallway, watching the scene as if it were a live soap opera. Marina looked at all those people. She saw the judgments in their eyes, the morbid curiosity, the silent scandal, and she felt the old impulse returning, closing her eyes, disappearing, running away. But then she remembered. She remembered Pedro teaching her to close her eyes, not to run away, but to feel. She remembered the pond of the Vitorias Regias, the sunset at Vista Cinesa, the aromatic plants in the sensory garden. She remembered every moment she had allowed herself to be present, connected, alive. She closed her eyes. But this time she didn't run away. She focused on her breathing, on the sound of the sea in the distance, on the smell of flowers from the garden, on the warmth of Pedro's hand as he reached for her. "Marina," his voice was soft, "I'm here, you are safe." She opened her eyes and found only him. Everything else, the people, the judgments, the scandal, disappeared. There was only the two of them, and the choice she needed to make. "If I go with you," she said in a low voice, "there's no going back. Everyone will know, everyone will talk. It will affect you, your career, your family. I know and I don't care. The only thing that matters to me is you." How can you be so sure? Because for the first time in my life, Marina Santos, I don't need data or statistics or analysis. I simply know. And you are asking me to go against everything my brain is programmed to do. But I'm going anyway. For you. For us. Marina looked at Clara, who gave a small nod of encouragement. She looked at Augusto, who seemed between shocked and curiously impressed. She looked at the crowd of unknown faces, waiting to see what she would do. And then she looked at Pedro. At that man who had entered her life like an unpredictable phenomenon, destabilizing everything she thought she knew about herself, who had taught her to feel instead of run away, who defended her without hesitation, who saw her as extraordinary when the world only saw scandal. She took his hand. Let's go. The murmur that rippled through the crowd was almost palpable. Marina saw mouths moving, cell phones being pulled out, glances being exchanged. Tomorrow she would be news. The daughter of the corrupt man and the eccentric count, the scandal of the season. But as they walked together through the gardens toward Pedro's car, Marina realized she wasn't afraid. Or rather, she was, but it was a different kind of fear. Not the paralyzing terror of being judged. It was the vertigo of jumping into the unknown. And for the first time, she wasn't jumping alone. "Where are we going?" she asked when they got into the car. "Away from here. To somewhere where we can just exist, without an audience, without judgments, just us." He interlaced his fingers with hers. "If you want to, of course." Marina looked back at the illuminated mansion where her life had just changed irreversibly. She could go back. She could apologize, go back to work, pretend nothing had happened. Go back to the safety of what she knew. Or she could choose the unknown, choose to feel, choose to live. "I want to," she said, and it was the most honest answer she had given in years. Pedro smiled, that genuine smile she loved, and started driving. They left Ipanema behind, left the party and the scandal and the judgments. And as the city opened up before them, Marina felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. But she knew the storm was only beginning, and that choosing to stay meant facing consequences she couldn't even fully imagine yet. She only hoped she was strong enough for what came next. Pedro drove to Urca, to a discreet lookout point that was almost empty at night. He parked facing the sea, and for long minutes they just sat in silence, listening to the waves crash against the rocks below. "I'm sorry," Marina said finally, "for not telling you about the job, for causing that scene. You didn't cause anything. I did by showing up there. I should have imagined that." He stopped, taking off his glasses to clean them. "No. In fact, I shouldn't have to imagine. You should have told me." "I know. I was afraid of your reaction. Afraid you'd realize how different our worlds are." "Our worlds aren't different, Marina. The world is the same. We just occupy different positions in it, and that doesn't determine who we are or what we can be together." He turned to her. "But I need you to be honest with me. Always. Because if there is no honesty, there is no trust. And without trust, there is no us." Marina felt the weight of the words. "You're right, and I promise no secrets even when I'm afraid. Especially when you're afraid." He took her hand. "And now, what do we do? Because tomorrow morning this will be everywhere. The internet, social media, high society gossip, eccentric count, and daughter of corrupt politician. Can you imagine the headlines?" Marina laughed humorlessly. "I can see it already. But Pedro, are you sure you can still go back? Say it was a misunderstanding, that you were just being kind to an employee in an embarrassing situation. Your family would accept that version, and you wouldn't have to deal with the consequences." "The consequences of what? Of choosing someone who makes me happy? Of being with someone who understands me in ways no one ever has?" He pulled her closer. "Marina, I spent 35 years conforming to loneliness, accepting that this was how my life would be. And then you appeared closing your eyes in the middle of a party, and something changed. I'm not giving that up. I'm not giving up on you." They kissed, and it was different from the other kisses. There was urgency, but also resolve. A promise sealed not with words, but with touch. When they pulled apart, Marina rested her forehead against his. "I'm going to lose my job at the events company. Probably. But it's a terrible company that pays you poorly and doesn't value you. It's the job I have. Had, and you can get another, or... He hesitated. I have a proposal, and I want you to think carefully before answering. Marina pulled back a little to see him better. What proposal? My research on neuroplasticity and trauma needs an administrative coordinator, someone to organize data, schedule interviews with patients, deal with the university bureaucracy. It pays better than your 3 jobs combined, has benefits, and you could keep studying, even do a master's degree if you wanted. Marina fell silent, processing. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering an opportunity, one you deserve, regardless of us being together or not. You are intelligent, organized, and good with people. You would be perfect for the role. People will say it's nepotism, that you gave me the job because we're together. So what? You'll do the job well, that's what matters, the rest is noise. He stared at her seriously. But you don't have to decide now. You don't even have to accept. It's just an option. I want you to know you have options. Marina felt tears in her eyes. Options. When was the last time she had real options? In the last 6 years she had only survived, jumping from one low-paying job to another, accepting anything because she couldn't afford to choose. I'll think about it, she said finally. But thank you for offering, for believing I'm capable. It's not believing, it's knowing. There is a difference. They stayed there until late, talking about everything and nothing, making vague plans for the future, avoiding thinking too much about the storm that would come. When Pedro finally took her home, it was past midnight. Donna Celia was awake, waiting in the living room. When Marina entered, her mother stood up with a worried expression. I saw it on Facebook. People are already talking, saying you caused a scandal at a high society event. Is it true? Marina sat beside her mother, preparing to explain everything. But before she could begin, Donna Celia surprised her. This man, this Pedro, is he the same one who made you smile last week? Yes. Does he treat you well? Very well. Does he know who you are, where you came from, about your father? He knows everything, and he doesn't care. Donna Celia took her daughter's hand. Then I don't care what people will say. You've already suffered too much paying for mistakes you didn't commit. If this man makes you happy, fight for it. Don't let the world take one more thing from you. Marina hugged her mother, finally letting the tears fall. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of fear and hope mixed together. The following days were exactly as difficult as Marina imagined. The video of her confrontation with Pedro at the party went viral on social media. Gossip blogs speculated about the relationship. Some posts were cruel, calling her a gold digger, an opportunist, saying she was taking advantage of the eccentric Count. Others were more neutral but equally invasive, dissecting every aspect of her life. Marina was fired from the events company for inappropriate conduct. She also lost her job as an administrative assistant when her boss saw the news and decided she didn't want trouble. Only her weekend job at a clothing store remained, which barely paid the rent. It could have been devastating. It should have been devastating, but Pedro was there, every day in some way, sometimes in person, sometimes through constant messages, sometimes just sending photos of natural phenomena he thought she would like. He kept her anchored when the pressure threatened to sink her. And something unexpected happened. People started taking her side. Not everyone, but some. Students from her college who knew her created a page defending her. A feminist blogger wrote an article about classism and how women were always blamed for their father's mistakes. A small but respected newspaper did a story on the second chance everyone deserves. It didn't change everything, but it changed something. Marina realized she wasn't alone in the fight. It was Pedro who suggested she write her own story. People are creating narratives about you, false narratives. Why not tell the truth, in your own words? So Marina wrote. She sat at her old home computer and wrote everything. About being 15 when the world collapsed. About taking care of her sick mother while working and studying. About the judgments, the isolation, the daily struggle to survive. About closing her eyes to run from the world until learning, with the help of someone special, to close her eyes to feel. She published the text on an anonymous blog. She didn't sign it with her full name, but anyone who wanted to know would identify her. And then she waited. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of shares, comments from people who had gone through similar situations, messages of support. And yes, also hate, but this time the hate was in the minority. "You touched people," Pedro said when they met at her apartment 3 days after the publication, "because you were honest, because you were vulnerable, because you showed that behind the scandal there is a real person." "I'm still afraid," Marina admitted. "Afraid of what comes next, afraid of losing you, afraid of not being strong enough." "Then let's be afraid together, but let's keep going anyway." It was Clara who asked to meet with Marina a week later. They met at a discreet coffee shop in Botafogo, away from the curious eyes of high society. "I read your text," Clara began bluntly, "and I need to apologize for judging you without knowing you, for assuming things about you based on prejudices I didn't even know I had." Marina was surprised. "I thank you. My brother is different, lighter, happier, and I realized it's because of you. You brought something to his life that I've never seen before, and I was wrong to try to protect him from you. If anyone needs protection, it's us, from the intensity of what you two have together." "Does your family still hate me?" "Some do. Uncle Augusto is furious. Aunt Helena thinks it's a whim of Pedro's, but others are curious. They want to know the real you, not the version created by the media. I don't know if I'm ready for that." "You don't have to be. But when you are, I'll be there to support you, because if it's important to Pedro, it's important to me." 3 months after the scandal, Marina had a completely new routine. She accepted the job in Pedro's research and discovered she was better at it than she imagined. She organized data efficiently, dealt with patients with empathy, and even began contributing insights that Pedro found valuable enough to include in his articles. She was paying for college without needing 3 jobs. She had time to sleep, to eat right, to live. And there was Pedro, always Pedro. They didn't live together yet, but they spent most of their days together. He taught her about neuroscience. She taught her about popular music and TV series he had never watched. They observed natural phenomena together. They cooked culinary disasters together. They built slowly but firmly a life together. It wasn't perfect. There were days when Marina still closed her eyes and ran away. Days when Pedro said something socially inappropriate and hurt her without meaning to. Days when the difference between their worlds seemed insurmountable. But they always came back to each other. They always talked. They always chose to stay. On a Saturday afternoon, 6 months after that fateful party, Pedro took her back to Vista Chinesa, the same place where they had kissed for the first time, where everything had started to become real. The sunset was spectacular, painting the sky in impossible oranges and pinks. They sat on the same low wall, wrapped in the same blankets, watching the city bathe in golden light. "Close your eyes," Pedro whispered. Marina obeyed, smiling. She knew what would come next, the instruction to feel the moment, to be present. But this time Pedro said something different. "Do you feel that? This sensation in your chest?" Marina focused. There was something there, yes, a warmth, a fullness. Happiness, she recognized, pure and simple happiness. "I feel it. It's gratitude and love, and the feeling of being exactly where I should be, with the right person, at the right moment." His voice was heavy with emotion. 6 months ago, you closed your eyes to run away. Now you close your eyes and find peace. You find happiness. You find us. Marina opened her eyes and found Pedro kneeling in front of her, holding a small velvet box. "I know it's early. I know logic says we should wait longer. But the data is clear, Marina. All indicators point to the same conclusion. You are the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, observing phenomena, feeling moments, building memories." He opened the box, revealing a simple gold ring with a small green stone. "Will you marry me?" Marina felt tears stream down her face. She looked at this man who had entered her life like a hurricane disguised as a breeze, who had taught her to live instead of just survive, who loved her with an intensity that defied all logic. "Yes," she said, and it was the easiest answer she had ever given. "Yes, yes, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and then pulled her into a kiss that was promise and celebration and future all in one. When they pulled apart, both were crying and laughing at the same time. "The stone is green tourmaline," Pedro explained, still holding her hands. "I found it at the botanical garden, Well, I didn't exactly find it. I bought it at the gift shop there. But symbolically, it represents our first real meeting. And green because it's the color of renewal, of growth, of starting over. Marina couldn't stop smiling. You are impossible and perfect and mine. Statistically improbable perhaps, but yes, yours. As the sun finished setting, they remained there, planning a future that had once seemed impossible. They would talk to their families. They would face the judgments that would certainly come. They would build their life together, brick by brick, moment by moment. "Are you afraid?" Pedro asked. "I am, but not the kind of fear that paralyzes me. It's the kind of fear that comes with big changes, with taking important steps." Marina interlaced their fingers. "And you?" "Terrified, but also certain, more certain than I've ever been of anything." Marina closed her eyes once more, but not to run away. She closed her eyes to fully feel that moment, the wind on her face, the smell of the sea, Pedro's hand in hers, the weight of the new ring on her finger, the happiness overflowing from her chest. She opened her eyes and found Pedro observing her with that intensity she loved. "What is it?" "Just observing my favorite phenomenon, you, being completely you, present, alive, mine." And there on that mountain overlooking the city that had been the stage for so much pain and so much growth, Marina finally understood what Pedro had been trying to teach her from the beginning. Closing your eyes wasn't a weakness when you closed them to feel. It was courage, the courage to be present, to allow yourself vulnerability, to choose to live fully, even knowing that life comes with risks. She had spent 6 years running from judgments, from pain, from memories, but running never took her anywhere. It was only when she stopped running, when she started feeling, when she chose to stay even while afraid, that her life truly began. And now, with Pedro by her side, with a future unfolding ahead like an impossible sunset, Marina was no longer afraid to feel. She was afraid, yes, afraid of failing, of disappointing, of not being strong enough, but they were human fears, fears that came with living for real, and for the first time she felt she had the strength to face them, because she was no longer alone, because she had found someone who saw her, all of her, with all the imperfections and scars and beauty, and because she had finally learned the most important truth, that living wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about choosing to feel anyway, choosing to be present, choosing to love, even knowing that love comes with risk. Months later, Marina was on the balcony of the house she now shared with Pedro in Santa Teresa, watching Rio wake up under the morning sun. She wore an old shirt of his and held a cup of coffee, her feet bare, her hair messy. It was an ordinary Tuesday, with nothing special happening. And yet it was everything. Pedro appeared behind her, wrapping her in a hug. "Good morning, Dr. Santos." She had started her master's the previous month, and he insisted on calling her doctor, even though the title was still years away. "Good morning, Dr. Vasconcelos. There's an interesting phenomenon happening. Want to see?" Marina smiled. "Always." He pointed to the garden. A metallic blue butterfly was landing on a hibiscus flower, its wings catching the morning light in an almost magical way. "Close your eyes," Pedro whispered, and Marina closed them, not out of fear, not out of a need to escape, but because she chose to, because she wanted to feel that moment in all its fullness, the warmth of the sun, the fresh morning breeze, the smell of coffee, Pedro's arms around her, the feeling of being home, of being whole, of being fine.